there. My name is Kelly Cody Grimm.
And I'm Max Grimm.
And we are Creative Actors Lab. What we want to do is just talk a little bit about how you can bring creativity into your everyday life. Hey, everybody. It's Kelly.
And Max.
And we are back for another podcast. And this time we thought that we would actually apply some skills to what we talk about in the podcast. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is a sonnet that Max has picked out. We're going to play around with different interpretations. I'm going to give him a little bit of direction, and, we're just going to see where it goes from there. And the reason we wanted to do this is so that you can kind of have some practical applications, whether you are actually doing a business presentation or you do have monologues or you do have sides, just different ways that you can play with it for yourself.
Okay, so the method to the madness is this. I'm starting a project on TikTok of Shakespeare. Shakespearean TikTok. Shake Talk, if you like.
Ooh, I like that.
Just because it's so much of what goes on TikTok does not appeal to me whatsoever, but there is this one like cultural part of the thing. And there is actually Shakespearean TikTok. It's kind of one of the things in my life is that I really want to do is, I just want to do more Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long period of my life where I did not even pick this stuff up, and it's just coming back to around. It's like, I really love this and I really want to do this. Now, there are some parts of Shakespeare I know actually really pretty well and could do right now. What I'm going to do right here, this ain't one of them. I remember reading the sonnets and for, voice practice and things like that. But that's been a really long time. So basically what you're getting here is this is a really green sort of reading of this. It's sonnet 116. Supposedly this was Laurence Olivier's favorite sonnet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about love. Basically this, I looked this over. I've not practiced or rehearsed this. As I say, you're getting a really rough reading of this thing. I'm at the stage with this to where it's like, I've got this big, heavy, clunky, complete works of Shakespeare sitting in front of me right now. And,
it's like, what, 6 inches thick, I would say,
and
if not more.
And it weighs like, I don't know, it must weigh like 15 pounds or something.
Yeah.
But, anyway, there's this one sonnet and I'm sitting down. I have the script right in front of me, and what I prefer to do when I know I've really got something is when I take the script and it goes farther and farther and farther away from me, physically. I'm not at that point right now. So I'm starting out just as rough and green as it gets. So, okay. It's number 116. Okay, here we go. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark, that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark, whose worth unknown although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, through rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
That's beautiful.
It actually, there's a couple lines in there I'm not entirely, the line about, or it is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown although his height be taken. That's a little muddy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it has got like an actual rhyme, but some of it's got the same amount of syllables in it. So that's a little something I'm trying to figure out a bit. But overall, this to me reminds me of one of my favorite songs in the entire world, which is "Thank You" by Led Zeppelin. It's if the sun refused to shine, I would still be loving you. If mountains crumbled to the sea, there would still be you and me. Basically, is what this is, and it's kind of like there can be storms. We're stronger.
Mm-hmm.
You have the haters who see you and maybe they want to break you up. No, there's trouble in the world. There's trouble in your general sphere of influence. That doesn't change anything. Mm-hmm. So that is to me what it means. So.
All right. And So if you were going to be performing this, would you be looking at actually trying to tell somebody this? Or, because I mean, I think one thing with the sonnets are really beautiful, but do you think it would help you to actually be speaking to someone and knowing a little bit of why it's so important for you to tell this person?
Yeah, because this is it's the sort of a thing where I saw this thing of Olivier on the old Dick Cavett show, and and Laurence Olivier is like, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. That's him. That's not, but it's like, cause I'm not, it's like, would I be saying this to a group of students at a graduation? Am I a person of the cloth marrying two people? It would take on different colorings if I were to do it in front of a crowd. Let not the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. But if I were speaking more to two people, it's like, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no. So I mean, it would take, and I'll say this for myself as an actor, when I was in the rehearsal process, and it was the sort of a thing to where I had to, like, my character was addressing a crowd, but I would be in like an empty theater or a rehearsal hall with like the director and a couple of my fellow actors. And it's like, you're not sounding like you're talking to 10,000 people. It's like, I know, because I'm not talking to 10,000 people. And it's like, well, okay, well, make it like you're talking to 10,000 people. It's like, okay, I will. It's like, no, now you're overacting. And that was one thing that as an actor always just screwed me right up.
Well, it's interesting because I am listening to Brian Cox's book, and, he has a background in Shakespeare, and he was talking about that sometimes the directors that just over-prepare can just really ruin the spontaneity in a performance. And that was something that he had experienced and doing Moby Dick. And what was interesting was he was doing Moby Dick. The other actor who was in his 50s, because if you do Ahab, you have to have your leg taped up, and then you've got that. So this other guy didn't want to do it. He was in his 30s. So opening night comes and the peg leg falls off.
Oh, God.
But he has to keep going. And what he said was they were thinking, oh, God, it's going to close. But people went, it was so genuine because rather than him stopping, he just turned and the other actors were trying to get it back on. He's like, leave it alone, lads. And then he ended up swinging in a rope, and that's how he got off stage. And he said improvisation in the moment. And I thought that was just so interesting. Then, again, just listening to a great actor like him. For those of you who don't know who Brian Cox is, and if you don't, you should. He is Logan Roy in Succession, but he's worked with Laurence Olivier, as you said.
Yes.
All right. So you know what? Why don't you try this as a officiant at a wedding, a minister at a wedding? And this is what he is saying to these two people.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Now, where I'm feeling a little sticky about this is, okay, I get it looks on tempest and is never shaken. It's the diamond. Nothing can break this. It is the star to every wandering bark. It's the fixed stars in the sky that you navigate ships by this. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken, is, and I'm even looking down in the footnotes of this, and I'm just not finding anything about it. But
those are teeny tiny footnotes too.
Yeah. In case you're seeing this podcast and you're wondering why I'm wearing two pairs of reading glasses simultaneously, because the prints are really small. But anyway,
We're talking the complete works of Shakespeare in one huge 15-pound book.
I'm guessing whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. They're referring to the star. It's like you don't know how large it is. You don't know how large it is. Right. It's whose worth's unknown because it's in the sky, although his height be taken. And then it turns, and then love's not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks. I'm guessing the way the phrasing goes is love's not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks. Okay. And then within his bending sickle's compass come, referring to death, I'm guessing, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. Okay, now that part I got, but those few lines in the middle are that I'm, just as I'm starting to, kind of intellectually and emotionally connect with, I kind of get those sentences in there, and it kind of like drags me out of it. Because I'm like, what am I talking about here?
You know what? Let's try it, because when we do song lyric monologues, and I've taken the theme to the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and I've made that a marriage proposal in that one. So try this as you've got your beloved. It's a starry night. You're sitting down. You're looking up at the stars. And this is how you're going to ask her to marry you.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no. It is an ever fixed mark that looks on in tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
I do. Yes. How did that feel?
Smoother.
Yeah.
Smoother. And it helps a lot, at least for me, when I am acting, and I sort of get this, it's like a visual kind of sensory sort of a flow going, for lack of a better term. And it's like, it's just, for some reason I'm seeing, like, I'm feeling grass, and I'm feeling like spring air, and I have the smell of flowers blooming and things, and it's things like that, and I don't plan it, but it's just something that sort of happens, and I just felt that this past on that particular one. It was where because it's like I could flow through it. And not sort of get to the lines in the middle and go, mellifluous, mellifluous, mellifluous. What am I talking about? And okay, let me try to get back out of it.
Because, I felt that just listening to it as the listener, and potentially the woman you would be proposing to.
Well,
yes.
Done that. So. We got that taken care of.
Yeah, that's true. It happened a little while ago. But listening to it, because then I think your intention was stronger when you knew that that's what the intention was to propose marriage, and then to get an affirmation from the woman that you were proposing to. So I think that, that would be one method to use with it. Do you want to play around with emotions?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me do the pencil trick.
There you go. Okay.
And okay, anybody who's ever had us as a student, you know what I'm talking about. You get yourself a pencil, you stick it in your mouth like this, and then you say whatever it is you're going to say. It's, yeah, and as you have said, it's kind of like running, it's like training for a marathon, but you've got weights on your ankles. And then when you run and you get the weights on your ankles, then you stop and you take them off. It's just a lot easier. But we've done other videos on the pencil trick, but anyway, in case you can't see me, I've got a pencil in my mouth right now. It goes like this. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark whose worths are known, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even unto the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, and no man ever loved.
All right. So how did that feel that time through with the pencil in your mouth?
Well, what I was able to do, and this is one of my own personal things, like when I first started to read this, I mean, basically I've got my head down looking at every single word. And then just this past time, what I've been able to do is I will physically look at the printed words, let me not, and then lift up to the marriage of true minds. And then looking down, admit impediments, and then to look up love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. And I'm able to take my eyes up off the page and put them out into the room, out on you, on the computer, on the microphone, whatever. It's just any place other than the printed page. So that for me is like, okay, I'm starting to flow with it better and that's something, I've said to, a lot of, especially like the really new young students that we have is like, get your piece of paper, have it in your hand and then slowly start to put it down and then, move and it's just stick it on the table and then move back from the table by 2 feet and then a couple of more feet and then just get more physical distance between you and the printed page. And that's and that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but, it works for me and it's worked for enough other people. It's kind of like the printed script. It's kind of your security blanket and you need to get rid of that thing as soon as possible. Keep it around to refer to it to make sure you get all the words and all of that in their proper order and you're not just totally flying by the seat of your pants and doing something that's, a kind of sort of loose representation of Shakespeare,
And that, and sometimes there is that school of thought where it's like, well, give them your interpretation and you don't necessarily have to be following the script. I don't know who is giving that out. As a writer and as an improviser, I'm probably a bit more flexible and people kind of paraphrasing and things like that, because I understand as an actor, sometimes that happens. However, as somebody who also edits video and has to do all that, you need, we've talked before about there's a very practical side to acting. There's a consistency that needs to be there. And then that's how you're able to put the project together, whether it's film or whether it's stage. Now, I know in some stage productions, you'll get to doing one interpretation and then you may go through, if it's a long run and, you're about 3 or 4 months into it, and then people start changing the interpretation a little bit just to keep it fresh. So you're not up there just kind of doing a recitation, which you don't want to do. And regurgitation. And then I liked what you talked about there, which is a lot of times if you are doing a cold reading, if you are able just to look at the first part of the line, but then know how the entire line goes, so you can look down and then look up at your auditioner and then look down and still be able to work that. That's a really good technique to try because, again, whether you are auditioning on Zoom or in person, They may give you 10 minutes to look over an entire scene. They don't.
You may not even get that.
You may not even get that. They may just go, here,
go.
Look at it and let's go. Let's just see what, your instincts are with it. But if you do learn to know, I can read the first part of the scene or the first part of the sentence, and then I know what the second part of the sentence is, and then be able to look up at the partner. And if they're able to do that too, then you have something that's more than just two people with their head down, looking at a paper, trying to react to one another. But if you can take that time and look up and do it, that really can change the whole dynamic.
It's how, back in the day, how TV newscasters, when they would basically get physical pieces of paper put in front of them with whatever the news story is. Mm-hmm. And it's just this learned thing to where the first part of the sentence is coming out of your mouth, but your brain is reading the second part of the sentence. So by the time you come to that first little bit of the sentence, you can actually look up and finish the sentence looking into the camera or looking at the other person. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a split-brained thing to do. And at first it's really awkward. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, I have not, I'm starting this project and everything like that. And there's some Shakespeare, as I say, I know really well, but then there's other parts of it that I want to do for this project. But the fact of the matter is, I just don't know. I mean, I can get it. It will take me some time, but I'm pretty much at ground zero, as is any other actor. And that's really what you're hearing right now.
And, again, talking about Brian Cox, and he does talk about the coaching Theo.
Mm-hmm.
And I will include that link in the podcast notes and the other notes. But that is a really good piece to look at, because you've got a 2.5-year-old boy who's very verbal, super, super smart. And you've got Brian Cox, who is not only an actor, but he was also an acting coach at that point too. And teaching him the to be or not to be speech and just going through it line by line. And what's so magical is just this little Theo. And if you were going to cast anybody as young Hamlet as a toddler, this kid would be it, because just cotton candy white hair, blonde hair. But when he goes, to be or not to be, that is the question.
And then he goes, yeah, it's a question.
Yeah. And it's like, to be or not to be, that is the question. He's like, yeah, it is. And you're like, oh my God, this 2.5-year-old gets the fundamental existential question of existence. He gets it, man. But it's a beautiful way just to kind of sit there and go, this whole soliloquy can be very overwhelming, but wait a minute, if I take it one by one, if I just go to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and just to go and stack that one by one, then all of a sudden it's not, because even somebody at the level of Olivier or Brian Cox, the first time you look at all that Shakespeare and Hamlet's like 4.5 hours if you do the whole thing. So yeah, it can be pretty daunting. And what I like about the sonnets, and what I love about you doing that, is they're self-contained. It's like, again, like a monologue that you might just pick up and just happens to be a monologue. They're very self-contained, so you don't have to know the whole backstory. But much like the monologues that we write for 541 Productions, it gives you the opportunity to add what nuance you want. Where's your character coming from? Because you don't have that in the sonnet. So then, as the minister, okay, as the guy who's proposing, that felt like that really worked for you as far as that goes. Do you want to try emotions with it?
Sure, why not? I have no idea what's going to happen here, but why not?
Yeah.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments.
Sarcastic.
Love is not love when it alters, when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no! It is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken.
Sad.
It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks.
Happy.
Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ and no man ever loved.
All right. How did that feel?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is particularly when you start doing like emotion exercises, or sense memory or like, animal exercises or stuff like that. What happens, I find with actors, is that you get over the technicalities of it. You get over the structure and the syntax and all that, and you just plain start doing it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, that's been like times with me in a kitchen being chef man, and I have a new recipe that I've never really done, maybe some techniques I haven't particularly done. And at first I'm always like, oh, I'm going to mess this up. And then there comes a point where it's like, I don't have time for this. Mm-hmm. I don't have time for this rumination. I don't have time for this self criticism or anything like that. It's like, you're just doing it.
Oh, that was fun. And you know what? Just when you're talking about animal, I came up with another idea.
All right.
You were a wolf talking to a Giselle.
All right. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no. It is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love is not time's fool through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even unto the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
Ooh, and you have that little growl at the end. Okay, so how did that feel?
Again, it's like anything else. Do it. I heard something recently. It's if you want to start using more of your brain in more creative ways, when you get up in the morning, brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Okay, is one thing. You
mentioned that the other day, and I need to do that.
And it's the same sort of thing. Whether you're doing this or you're doing whatever, ad copy for toothpaste or whatever, it gets you out of the mechanical, or at least the way it works for me is at some point I have to get the mechanical part of the character and the script down, and then I have to have at some point the flow is what I have to get. And when stuff like that starts happening, at least for me personally, it reminds me of how I once heard jazz music described. It's like if you want to come to understand jazz music, it's like, okay, you've got your piano, and on your right hand you're playing the melody, and on the left hand you're doing the rhythm. You're doing the bump, 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 and the right hand's doing the deedly, deedly, dee, dee, dee. Okay, think of the right hand as Paul McCartney, and think of the left hand as John Lennon. And Paul McCartney is the nice guy, the happy guy, the sweet guy, the moon in June guy. And then you got John Lennon, and he's kind of the saltier, more cynical one, and you sort of get the nice guy and the salty guy together. And when you get that flow, when you get that, well, I guess what I want to say is when you get that equilibrium between the salty, cynical, looking out of the corner of my eye and giving and looking askance, and then there's the happy guy who's in love and wants everybody to be happy, and that sort of thing. When you get that equilibrium between the two, that's when great things come out of those collaborations. And it's the same thing, at least in my brain, because particularly in Shakespeare, it can be so bloody mechanical. And it was written in embryonic pentameter, which basically means like unstress, stress, unstress, stress, unstress, stress, I remember doing Midsummer Night's Dream. There's like my manservant. We could not figure out, it was Philostrate is what we figured the character's name out to be, with the unstressed stress. We were going, his name's Philostrate. His name, and we went through like half a dozen
I've heard it pronounced as Philostrate, yes.
Yeah, and we finally got somebody in there, and they're like, okay, no, if you look at the syllables of this name, it's unstress, stress, unstress, stress, unstress, stress. Philostrate is what it came out to be. And some people get, and I get it, and there's, Shakespearean purists will just probably be unhappy at me for saying this, but some people get so caught up in the mechanics of it, and you can't do it any other way. And if you're not doing unstress, stress, unstress, stress, unstress, stress, you're butchering Shakespeare, you heathen, but my feeling of it, and I remember auditioning for a Shakespearean play at one point that I got cast in, and the director was going to be so much into the, you have to do it this way. There was going to be no room for anybody's, personal interpretation or anyone's, individual coloring. It's just like, it is said this way, period. You have to do it exactly like this. And it's like, I'm going to go nuts with this.
I actually remember at Florida State, they brought in Joseph Papp. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know Joseph Papp, he created the Public Theater in New York.
Shakespeare in the Park.
Yeah, and Shakespeare in the Park. And so Peter MacNicol, who I'd also remember from a number of movies, Ghostbusters 2.
Ally McBeal.
Yeah, really wonderful actor and very, very kind. So he's coming in, we're all these college students, and the thing I really learned from Joseph Papp, and I think I got to sit, because I wasn't a theater major, but he had me read a little bit. He didn't really say too much, but he didn't throw a pencil at me.
That's good.
And I felt like that was kind of his thing. If he didn't like what you were doing, he'd throw pencils at you and just go.
That's nice.
Yeah. But I remember at the end, he kept on saying that they weren't reading Shakespeare correctly because people were automatically stopping at the end of the line. But if you know Shakespeare, that's just how it's written, but you don't stop at the end of the line. You keep on going, like, to be or not to be, that is the question. So you wouldn't go to be or not to be, hold, that is the question. Even if that is the question looks like that's the next line. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of knowing the flow and, as you said, the iambic pentameter. Mm-hmm. But he really got on people about that and their elocution. I do remember he was very much that, a lot of times young actors swallow their words. And really with Shakespeare, you have to understand it. And you've got to portray it, but don't swallow the words, because they're very beautiful, famous, poetic words. And so don't feel like you have to do this. You can do an intense interpretation, but if the audience isn't understanding you because you're swallowing it and you're so emotional, you're going to take them out of the beauty of it. And I think that's why people feel the way they do about Shakespeare is, if you just break it down and you are saying, this is how Hamlet is feeling, he's questioning his own mortality, and you just step back and say, well, as a human being, we all do that. And then you start into the to be or not to be, then you're able to work with it a little bit better. But I think people so much with Shakespeare, they get so hung up on the language.
Yeah.
And right away, it scares people. And that's why I would say, start with, a play like you and I fell in love doing, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Mm-hmm. And that one is fun because if you're, bottom or you're one of the rude mechanicals, there's a lot of comedy in there.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be what I would tell you. And again, listening to Brian Cox, and he was talking about doing King Lear on TV with Olivier. And this was about, I think, 6 years before Olivier passed away in his 80s. And he just sit there and go, I'm so tired. There's so much to this. It's so long and I'm so tired. And Lear is it is a very physically, emotionally, intellectually, it's a very demanding role. And he was kind of like what you said. He was talking about, there was another actor who had just done Lear on TV on the BBC. And he was like, oh, did you go and see it? And they were like,
he knew every word of that play.
Yeah,
I don't know why that
exactly.
bothered me. I don't know a word of this play. I don't know. But I say, but the other actor, he knew every word of this play on this thing. I don't know a word of this play, but I'm still a better actor than he is.
Yes. So, well, you're Laurence Olivier. So it was, it was just very interesting, again, to hear a luminary like Brian Cox, but he was a very young man when he did work with Olivier, and then just to be in the thrall and the luminescence of someone, certainly that many people would consider probably one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of all time. Although we did talk about Edwin Booth back in his day, probably being one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of his time as well. So did you want to run through it one more time?
Well, you know what I do think, just something that you just said, basically I think the thing when it comes to Shakespeare, and so many people get, if you're going to act and you're serious about it, even if you're not going to ever do Shakespeare, pick it up and at least read through the language and try to, if nothing else, make sense of it, and if you had to translate it into words that we here in 2023 would understand, you've got to be able to do that, to process it from whatever the Old English language is into how would you make it understandable to someone who has never seen this stuff, does not care about it?
Kenneth Branagh does an excellent, if you look at like different Hamlets, Olivier, Mel Gibson's Hamlet was actually really good.
It was,
and Kenneth Branagh, Emma Thompson. Yeah. So anybody that you can see, in fact, I was telling Max, there was a 15-part series in 1960 that was like the Kings of Shakespeare. And what they did was take all the histories, like, Richard III, and they put them in chronological order. And they were 1 hour. So I'm like, I would really love to see that, because you have actually a very young Sean Connery doing Shakespeare at that time. And so, the BBC kind of, I tend to think they might know a little thing about the Shakespeare dude. Yeah. But, just to watch it, maybe read it and then watch and see how an actor would interpret it. And the good news is, even if you don't want to sit through the full-flung production, and I have not seen The Scottish Tragedy with Denzel Washington, but I hear it's excellent. So I'd like to sit down and watch that. And that one's actually a 90-minute. That's one of his shorter plays. Watch a comedy. Watch one of the romances. And then work your way up. The histories. Richard III's pretty amazing.
Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio and Julia Stiles, I think. Oh, God. That one's pretty good. That one brings that into the world. Taming of the Shrew is a lot of fun. The Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor version is pretty amazing. That's one. If you can find it, I have actually seen excerpts from Taming of the Shrew with Raul Julia and Meryl Streep done for the Public Theater of Shakespeare in the Park. And if you know the play, when their two characters first meet, they beat the absolute crap out of each other.
That's so much. You and I have done that scene. It's so fun.
What I do want to say is, just as far as when you're reading the words and, if you had to describe them, I think even if you're never going to do Shakespeare, I do think it is a very important and valuable thing for an actor to practice, of taking these speeches and just how would you translate them to somebody. To me, this Sonnet 116, it reminds me so much of the song Thank You by Led Zeppelin, which is basically... if the sun refused to shine, I would still be loving you. Mountains crumble to the sea, there would still be you and me. Kind woman, I give you my all. Kind woman, nothing more. Then it's little drops of rain, whisper of the pain, tears of love lost in the days gone by. My love is strong, with you there is no wrong, together we shall grow until we die. Oh my, inspiration's what you are to me. Inspiration, look, see. And it's like that. And I can't help but think, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh no. It is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Or something like that.
But yeah, actually, right after you said that, I'm like, that's also a good way to learn, is put it to a song that you love and music.
Yeah.
And that just your brain absorbs things way, way better
and
that way.
Don't worry about sounding pretty or sing, and even if you can't sing to save your life, sing it anyway. But there is something I don't know what the I don't know as far as the neuroscience is concerned, and there is definitely neuroscience behind this about singing things like this to really stick it in your brain, and it really winds up putting it there. But that being said, after all this,
you want to run it through one more time?
Last time.
All right.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, through rosy lips and cheeks. Within his bending sickle's compass come, love alters not with brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Yes. And for the record, I will of course go on and keep working this until I can actually put it in, have it be on video and have it be part of the Shakespearean project. But I feel like I'm getting to a point now, because what happens with me when I am learning something new, I am the king of overthinking.
Queen of overthinking.
And what I will do is I'll be looking at something and it's like, there's 50,000 parts to this thing and there's 25,000 steps. And then after I kind of do it a few times, no, Max, there's 3 parts and 2 steps. And just keeping it simple. And in that, once I kind of get myself to that point, which I feel like right now I'm getting there after running this thing, in different ways several times here. It's like, okay, I'm starting to get to it to where I can just do it in simplicity, and out of that simplicity, organically stuff will start coming, like inflections and subtexts and things like that will start to form and come out that I never really planned. And I love that. I love that.
And that's all part of the creative process. And give yourself permission to explore that. One of the things I have noticed when I coach kids is because they're taught memorization patterns, and you've got to memorize facts, and you've got to keep them exactly like that. And so what's interesting is sometimes it's harder once a child, they're more open to interpretations and the improv and everything, but once they memorize it, they get into a memorization pattern, and it can be really hard to break that. So that's where you've got to bring back the fun and the games again so that they can get back to that. And that's what I would suggest to you. Again, whether you're doing a presentation, try a presentation as a wolf and see how that goes with your PowerPoint. If you're feeling like, oh, I just don't feel like I'm getting anything, maybe kind of play with that where you are Wonder Woman and you've got the, Wonder Woman body position, hands on the hips and giving that kind of power out. But there's any number of ways to interpret things, and don't limit yourself, because that, again, that's the beauty of creativity. It's trying something new. Don't judge yourself, because that will keep you from doing the things you need to. And that's the hardest thing.
That is way easier said than done.
Exactly.
Believe me. But just don't forget while you're in the process of sorting out the minutia and trying to sand down the rough edges of whether you're acting or doing whatever it is you're doing, you can't let yourself forget for too long why you're doing this and why you love it in the first place.
Absolutely.
Because once you lose that, you've lost everything.
Yeah. So keep it light and keep it fun and play around with it and do things that may be counterintuitive. And sometimes that's where you find the really cool stuff, I think, in acting, in life too. Yeah. But anyway, okay, I think that's a good note to close on. Thank you guys so much.
I hope this is helpful. I sincerely hope it's helpful. I mean, honestly, y'all have certainly helped me by just letting me sit here for this 30 minutes or whatever it is that we've been going. And it's helped me a lot. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for indulging me.
All right. Thank you. And we will see you next time. Have a great one, guys.
Be well, everybody.
Bye-bye. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and keep in mind that you can catch us on our social media, Creative Actors Lab on Instagram and Facebook, and by the same name on YouTube. And for more on what we do, you can go to our website,
creativeactorslab.com, all one word. Thank you for listening. Stay curious, make art.org. Much love until next time.